it. We managed to allow everybody to be able to see and hear us. Unfortunately, I apologize for that delay. Technical trouble manages to crop up, even though it worked shortly beforehand. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see where you're all calling from. And we are going to be very short and sweet tonight. We're going to jump into a fabulous topic, actually, a topic which has a tremendous amount of positive connotations, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. So you'll enjoy what you learned today, as well as be able to implement it into practice. First and foremost, this is the Hebraics Institute's live webinar on a topic of decoding the Bible. However, we're going to veer from our regular style and regular choice of topics. And I want to focus really on the word first, and then spend a little bit of time just pointing out where you find this verse in the Bible, and more importantly, the application of the lesson here, because the topic tonight sort of begs us to focus on what its application is to our life, rather more than per se where it comes from in the Bible in the particular text. So let's jump right in. Just want to make sure that everybody can hear me clearly, and if you could hear me clearly, I'd love for you to give me a 5 in the chat and let me see that you're able to hear me. Very nice. All right. Very good. Okay, and I'm assuming you can see the slide that we have in front of you, the Hebraics Institute logo with the Hebrew letters in the background. If you can see the Hebrew letters and you can see that slide clearly, please give me a 2, so I'll know that you're able to see that and we can move forward. All right, welcome from all over. Look at that, all around the United States. Amazing. Okay, so let's take a step into our webinar. Tonight we're going to learn about the meaning of love. So the word for love in Hebrew is ahava, and every Hebrew word has a root that can be shared by many other words, but also lends a better understanding of the word's actual meaning. Now, when you think of the meaning of love, my question for you is, I want you to let me know in the chat, give me some comments over there. What is the first thought that comes to your mind when you think of the word love? And I specifically chose a generic image so that it shouldn't influence or color, pardon the pun there, the answer that you're going to be able to give me as far as what love means to you. I'd like you to share with me a little bit of that very quickly. All right, and let's take a little look at this word love. First, we're going to break down love to its etymological breakdown. What does it actually mean in Hebrew? So obviously the Hebrew ahava means love, and then, as you know, the root of the word love, every Hebrew word has a root. We call that in Hebrew a shoresh, and the shoresh, more often than not, is found is 3 letters, the 3 main letters of the word. Oftentimes, however, like in the case of ahava, you'll find that in a way it's 2 letters. Now, the Hebrew root of the word ahava, or the word love, is the middle 2 letters, which is pronounced hav. As you can see here, I shaded out the other 2 letters, and hav actually gives us a very powerful insight into the meaning of love. And the meaning of hav actually is to give, because if you love another, you give. Now, how many in today's society especially think of love as what it makes them feel like and what it does for them or it does to them? Most of the time when you hear people speaking about love, unfortunately, they will share with you their receiving or their experience of love. What does love do to them? What does love make them feel like? And in reality, a healthy love is actually when you're focused on what you can give the other. And even more basically, it's the ability to give another. And that's the truest form of what love actually is. So one of the examples, one of the earliest examples actually, that we find in the clear text I'm talking about, because in reality, you can go back to Adam, when Adam was shown Eve, and we actually will talk about this in a follow-up class to this topic. When Adam was shown Eve, he expressed, not with the word love, but he expressed an expression that actually showed that he was feeling love for Chava, love at first sight, actually. But that's not in the actual text of the Bible. But we'll get into that, but not tonight. I wanted to give you an example of where the word ahava itself, and it's obviously not going to be in the form of ahava, but rather in the verb of ahava, in the action. In the first case where you find that is in chapter 22, verse 2 of the book of Bereshit, of Genesis, where we're learning about Avram's 10th test. Now, this is where Abraham, or Avram, is the real Hebrew of his name, Avraham. He was given 9 tests prior to this, but the 10th test was the be-all and the end-all. As a matter of fact, the Talmud tells us, fascinatingly, that if the 10th test wasn't succeeded, if Abraham didn't succeed at the 10th test, then none of the 9 tests prior to that would have counted, which is a very fascinating idea in general. And again, not something for tonight's lesson, but the idea of God testing Abraham in general is a fascinating topic. So, taking a look at this verse, chapter 22, verse 2 of the book of Genesis, God describes to Abraham in this 10th test that he wants him to take his son Yitzchak, some people translate that as Isaac, and offer him as a sacrifice. That is a strange request. That was a pagan practice, a very popular pagan practice, mind you, that Abraham fought against his entire life. It was something Abraham not only abhorred, but he taught many, many other people not to do such practices. He said that God doesn't want you to sacrifice your son. He doesn't want your children to be killed on an altar. He wants you to be in a relationship with God. And there isn't this physical, material God that's an idol that they worshipped up until that point, the pagans, but rather he is a God that's a spiritual God. And that was such unusual talk in those days that they thought of Abraham initially as a lunatic. And ultimately, through Avram's success, he ended up converting and bringing a tremendous amount of the world population with him in this belief in a God that you cannot see, what they referred to in those days as the invisible God. So, after all of this long, lengthy period of time, Avram is well over 100 years. He devoted the majority of his lifetime to spreading the awareness of God and the correct understanding of God and fighting against such practices. Along comes God and tells Abraham, I want you to do exactly what you fought against. I want you to take your son, your only son, the son whom you love. And there's a cute little joke that goes along with that. It says, the Medrash is actually serious, but the Medrash tells us why, incidentally, does God describe Isaac in such terms. Take a look at this. It says, please take your son, right, your only one, whom you love. Over here in this interesting translation, I quoted it because I wanted to point it out. It says, yeah, Isaac, and go away to the land of Moriah and bring him up there for a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell you. This is verse 2. So the Medrash says, why does he describe take your son? And then he says, your only son, whom you love. Why not just say take Isaac or take your son Isaac? Save the Torah is the Bible is very economical. You won't spend all these extra words. So it says that this is actually a conversation between Abraham and God. God said to him, I want you to take your son. He says, God, I have 2 sons. Which son? So he says, your only one. So he says, okay, but they're both my only son from their mother. Yishmael was the only son of Tamar, of Hagar. I apologize. A senior moment there. And at that point in time, by the way, incidentally, Abraham had many sons from Hagar later on. And then he said, and Isaac is my only son from my wife Sarah. So they're both my only sons. So God said, okay, the one whom you love. So Abraham said, by the way, sincerely, I love them both. So God said, okay, Isaac. So the joke that they tell is that if Abraham wouldn't have pushed, he should have said, especially with all that's going on today, this is not a politically correct joke, but it's one that's told nonetheless, that with all that's going on with the Muslims, and they're attacking those who don't believe like them, that Abraham should have just said, when he said, take your son, Abraham said, which son? He says, your only son. He said, okay, you mean Yishmael? He would have taken Yishmael, slaughtered him, and we wouldn't have all those problems that we have today. But that's a bad joke. But on a serious note, so it says, take your son, your only son, whom you love. So you see over here the word ahavta. I underlined it in red, so you can see we're actually the tough at the end of the word is saying you love. It changes it from love to you love, but the root of the word is still there, the hey and the vase, or the vet, in this case the aleph, hey and the vet. So you see that's the first case of love. Now what's interesting is obviously later on we'll have the quintessential command, and I show you here Vayikra chapter 19 verse 18, which is Leviticus, the third book of the Torah, and over there is has been referred to as the entire Torah. This is all of the commandments built into one, that you should love your neighbor as yourself. And the word over there, v'ahavta, is the same letters. I didn't want to totally hand it to you on a silver tray, so I didn't underline it in red, but you'll see it over there that it's the same letters as ahavta. The vav in the beginning of that means and. That's a prefix. So that's the biblical examples I'm going to show you inside that you can see of the word love. But I want to tell you incidentally and interestingly that love that's used as a classic example by the Torah isn't actually the love of Abraham to Yitzchak. It isn't even the love later on mentioned that Jacob has to Rachel, or Isaac, Yitzchak has to Rivka, to Rebecca. It's actually the love, if you want to know the classic example of what the Torah defines true love as, is not even between a man and a woman, not even between a husband and a wife, not even between a parent and a child, but rather, interestingly, it is in the book of Kings, when we're talking about King Saul, the first Jewish king, and his son-in-law and successor, even though he was tormented by him, it was by Saul, King David's brother-in-law, his name was Jonathan, or Yehonatan in the Hebrew, became true friends. They became best buddies. Now, they were also brothers-in-law because David married his sister, as a reward for the brave act that he did by killing Goliath. He was handed the princess in marriage, and they became best friends, King David and Jonathan. And over there, that love, it says that they loved each other, and that love, incidentally, even down to Jewish law, is brought down as the classic example of love. Now, what does that teach us? And with this, we're going to end tonight's lesson, that there's a difference between a natural love, a love of a parent to a child, and a love of a sibling, to a love which is done by choice. A natural love is a constant, but it's the chosen love, and in this case it would be, by the way, a love of a husband to a wife, because that's also not natural, meaning to say it's not something you're born with, but the two of you meet and then develop a loving relationship. Because if you recall, to love does not mean how the person makes you feel, but rather the development that you've developed together over time, that which you've given each other, the fact that you were capable of giving this person love and meaningful experiences over time, that's when love is true. So for a natural love is a constant, but it's a chosen love that has its ups and downs. It gets passionate. Sometimes it's on the rocks. Sometimes it's exciting. Sometimes it's tremendous. And that's why it's actually the perfect opportunity to give to other. And that's why it's brought down as the classic example of love. Because even when it doesn't come naturally, when you may be upset at your spouse, or you may be upset at the person that you're in a relationship with that you love, but at that moment in time, you can give of yourself. You can give that person a second chance. You can give that person despite not feeling compelled to. That's the truest form of love. And on that note, we're going to conclude tonight's lesson with a beautiful Hasidic story that I think brings in a even higher component of love. What is this beautiful story? It's a Hasidic story, which has actually been attributed to the Hasidic master Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, or to a different Hasidic master by others. But regardless of who the Hasidic master that taught it to us is, it's a fascinating insight into love. He said as follows. Let's assume it was Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. He said, "I learned the true meaning of love from a drunk." What's the story? He said, "I once passed two drunks drinking in the gutter, and I overheard the following conversation between them." So the first drunk said to the other, he said, "I love you." And drunk number two said, "No, you don't." So drunk number one said to him, "Yes, yes, I do. I love you with all my heart." Drunk number two said, "No, you don't. Because if you love me, then why don't you know what hurts me?" And with that, ladies and gentlemen, a beautiful, beautiful meaning of love, even deeper in a sense than just to give, but to actually be able to not only know what bothers the other person, but be able to give them the comfort to heal that hurt. That concludes our message on Ahava, on decoding the Bible, seeing what the real meaning of the word Ahava is, to have, to give. And I look forward to answering any of your questions if you had them in the chat. And if not, I bid you a farewell this evening. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments or any thoughts or any actual topics that you'd like us to cover in some of the future webinars, don't be afraid to send us that in the chats, or you can email us at rabbi@hebraics.org. Additionally, you can go to our website, Hebraics.org, and check out all of the opportunities that you have over there. We also have several other classes. If you haven't already taken some of our online classes, such as decoding the Bible, this would be an excellent opportunity for you to do so. We are actually about to release and make available, incidentally, the 4-week online course. For anybody who hasn't joined the wait list, I encourage you to do so. Again, you could do that under classes, under seminars on our website, Hebraics.org, and it's something which you'll truly enjoy. All right, have a wonderful evening, everybody. We will see you all at the next webinar, God willing. Keep well.